Namaste to one and all. I welcome you to yet another session of Śabda-yoga. In today's session, we will be discussing the yogic terminology Svarupa. We will see the etymology, lexicon and textual occurrences in connection to this term Svarupam. First, we look into the etymology. So we see that this word is not derived from the root as such. It's a compound term of two existing terms, Swa and Rupa. And it's a compound where we see Swasya Rupam, Svarupam. So that's how the compound is split. Swasya Rupam, Svarupam. So Swasya of oneself, which is the first term. And then the second term is a Rupam, form. So one's own form is the general meaning that we get by looking at the analysis of the compound term Svarupam. And this compound happens based on the grammatical rule Shashti. So the compound here is Shashti Tatpurusha. So this is about, this is what the etymology reveals. Now coming to the lexicon. So we see the Amarakosha giving two entries on Svarupa. We see that Swarupancha Swabhavascha Nisargascha. So this is how it is. Svarupa, Swabhava, Nisarga. All these indicate nature. So this is the first entry. So all these Svarupa, Swabhava, Nisarga. These three terminologies indicate the nature of a given thing. And then the other interesting connotation to this terminology is brought out by another reference from the Amarakosha, where we see Praptarupa Swarupa Bhirupa Buddhamanojnayoho. So three terminologies, Praptarupa, Swarupa and Abhirupa. So these are the three words in Sanskrita and they have two meanings, intelligent and beautiful. So Buddha Manognayoho. So when you use the word Praptarupa or Svarupa or Abhirupa, depending upon the context, it can be taken to mean someone, some entity which is beautiful or intelligent. So thus from the lexical reference, we get three meanings: the nature, intelligent person and a beautiful person. And from the etymology, we saw Svarupa refers to one's own form. So these are the grammatical inputs, etymology and lexicon, with regard to the terminology Svarupa. Now let us get into the yogic context. So in this yogic context, so how do we see, what are the references? There are about 9 references to the term Svarupa from Yogasūtra itself. So let us take chapter by chapter. So in the first chapter, we see in the very beginning, Tada Draṣṭuhu Svarupe Avasthanam. So Draṣṭuhu Svarupa, the form of the Draṣṭā. Draṣṭā is the seer, the consciousness. And when there is yoga, in the state of yoga, when there is Chitta Vritti Nirodha, then one is established Avasthanam in the form of the Draṣṭā, which is pure consciousness. And then that is the meaning there, Svarupa, in the form of the Draṣṭā. And then we see another reference later in the first pada itself, Smriti Parishuddhau, Svarupa Shunye Varthamatra Nirbhasa Nirvitarka. So this is in the context of Nirvitarka Samapatti, Samadhi state, Nirvitarka Samadhi state, where while in the previous context, the Svarupa of the Draṣṭā was discussed, here Svarupa Shunyata is spoken. Means as if the form does not exist, as if the form of the Chitta here does not exist. So previously it was the form of the Draṣṭā being established in the form of the Draṣṭā. Now in the context of the Nirvitarka Samadhi, it is as if the Svarupa of the Chitta itself does not exist. By cleansing the Smriti, So when as if the chitta itself does not exist, then the pure reflection only of the object alone when it exists. So that is nirvitarka samapatti. So you can see the previously it was the Svarupa of the Draṣṭā. Here it is the Svarupa of the chitta. Then in the second chapter, again we see a very interesting occurrence. Swaswami shaktyoho swarupopalabdhi hetu sanyogaha. So the heya hetu, so the sanyoga, drashtridrishya sanyogaha heya hetuhu. So the cause of suffering in Yogasūtra is stated as the conjunction, sanyoga of Draṣṭā and Drishyam, and the sanyoga or the conjunction of the Draṣṭā and Drishyam itself is defined in the sutra where we find the term Svarupa. Swashakti is the Shakti of the Drishya, and the Swami Shakti is the Shakti or the consciousness or the conscious nature. So Swami Shaktyoho Swarupopalabdhi hetu. So by to know Swarupa Upalabdhi, here it is the Upalabdhi. Upalabdhi means jnanam. So for the knowledge of the form of a Swa, which is Drishya, and Swami, which is the consciousness, this sanyoga exists. So when there is a conjunction between Draṣṭā and Drishyam, by the self-same conjunction, sanyoga, the form of the nature of the Draṣṭā is also known, which is Swami Shakti, and the nature of the Drishyam is also known, which is Swa Shakti. So there also Swarupa Upalabdhi is mentioned. Then here the next subsequent reference we get in towards the end of the second chapter, where we see in defining Pratyahara, we again see the usage of the term Svarupa. Svavishaya samprayoge sati chittaswarupanukaraivendriyanam pratyaharaha. So when the senses do not get in touch with their respective objects and then they follow the chittaswarupa, they as if follow the form of the chitta. So then it is called as pratyahara. The senses not getting in touch with their respective objects and as if the senses follow anukara of the chitta. If they do, means they are obedient to the mind, then it becomes pratyahara. So there, here it is Svarupa Anukara. So far we have seen Svarupa Avasthana, Svarupa Shunya, Svarupa Upalabdhi, and then Svarupa Anukara. And then later in the third chapter we see Tadeva Arthamatra Nirbhasam Svarupa Shunyamiva Samadhi. In 1.43 previously we saw, so to attain the state of Samadhi, again the Svarupa Shunya, as if the Chitta and all its impressions should as if be cleansed, and it becomes so transparent that so crystal clear that it as if does not exist. Only the object of meditation is reflected as such. So in the context of Samadhi, we repeatedly see the usage Svarupa Shunya of the Chitta. Then interesting occurrence here in the context of Bhuta Jaya and Indriya Jaya, we again see the usage of the term Svarupa. Sthula Svarupa Sukshman Vayarthavatva Sanyamad Bhuta Jaya Grahana Svarupa Asmitan Vayarthavatva Sanyamad Indriya Jaya. So towards the attainment of Bhuta Jaya and the Indriya Jaya, conquest, complete control over the elements and complete control over the sense organs. So 5 levels of Sanyama is spoken for each of it. Sthula Sanyama, Svarupa Sanyama, Sukshma Sanyama, Anvaya Sanyama, Arthavatva Sanyama for Bhuta Jaya. Here Grahana Sanyama, Svarupa Sanyama, Asmita Sanyama, Anvaya Sanyama and Arthavatva Sanyama here for the Indriya Jaya. So we see here that the word Svarupa is a technical term in the context of Bhuta Jaya and Indriya Jaya. So the Svarupa in the context of Bhuta Jaya is the Svarupa of each of those Bhutas is a specific technical term. So that Svarupa refers to, according to Sadashiva Brahmendra, in the context of bhutas, Katinya, Sneha, Aushnya, Prerana, Sarvagatatva. So the Svarupa of each of these bhutas are indicated here. The Svarupa of the Prithvi or the earth is Katinya, hardness. And then the Svarupa of Apaha or the water is Sneha, means the binding nature. And then the Svarupa of Agni is heat, Aushnya. And then the Svarupa of Vayu is Prerana, means that which impels, that which initiates movement. And then the Svarupa of Akasha is Sarvagatatva, being present everywhere. So hence, these are the Svarupas of the Pancha Mahabhutas or the 5 elements upon which Sanyama has to be done. And this is the second level of Sanyama. First is Sthula Sanyama, the gross form as they are visible. And then this is the Svarupa Sanyama. Then one goes to the Sukshma, Anvaya, Arthavatva Sanyama. So I'm not going into the rest of it because we are focused only on the Svarupa terminology here, but I'm giving you the context. So by doing Sanyama on the Svarupa, it becomes the second level of Sanyama towards attainment of Bhuta Jaya. So there are 5 levels of Sanyama for Bhuta Jaya. In the same way, the Grahana, Svarupa, Asmita, Anvaya, Arthavatva Sanyama is to be done for Indriya Jaya also. So then the Svarupa of the Indriyas, again according to Sadashiva Brahmendra, is Prakashakatvam. So the ability to throw light. So that is the Svarupa of each of the Indriyas. So the eyes throw light on the form. And then the ears throw light on the sound. The sense of taste throws light on the taste. So in this way, and touch, and in the same way, so each of these senses, the 5 senses, have the Svarupa as Prakashakatvam, means bringing to light their respective objects. So that is Svarupa in the context of Indriyas. So that is the second level of Sanyama, Svarupa Sanyama, among the series of 5 Sanyamas, which will finally lead to complete conquest of the Indriyas. So we see in Bhuta, so previously we see Svarupa Shunya and Svarupa Avasthana, etc. So here it is Svarupa Sanyama towards the attainment of Bhuta Jaya and Indriya Jaya. So many implications of the term Svarupa is coming out. And then in the 4th chapter, in the 4th pada, we see couple of references. Atitanagatam Svarupataha Asti Advabheda Dharmanam. Now you know that Yoga Shastra says the world outside is real. It doesn't go into non-existence. So hence it says, so in this context, in the 4th chapter, the reality of the world outside does not mean that whatever is existing in the present alone is real. Atita and Anagata. So that which existed in the past also is there. It has not gone into total oblivion. And then that which is yet to emerge, it doesn't mean that it is going to emerge newly. It will just manifest. So the idea is the past, the future, just like the present, exists in its own true nature. Svarupataha asti. By its true nature, it exists. It is only that the past and the future has become unmanifest. So their mere unmanifest nature does not mean that they have gone into total non-existence. So yoga is a shastra which is which states, or which is of a firm belief of the reality of the world, and that reality of the world is not limited only to the reality of the present. All that is past also really exists in its true nature. All that is yet to come in the future also exists in its original form. It's only the difference between te vyakta sukshmaha gunatmanaha. So because of certain combinations and permutations of the gunas, the present is vyakta, manifest. The past and the future are sukshma, unmanifest. So only that is the difference. So even to bring about the absolute realist nature of the yoga system of philosophy, the terminology Svarupa is used in the 4th chapter. And then finally, the very last sutra of Yogasūtra also ends with Svarupa only. So, so in the previous reference, we saw Svarupataha asti. By its form, everything is existing. So that is just like Swarupa Shunya, Swarupa Avasthana. Here it is Swarupataha asti. So by its nature, everything exists. So that was brought out. And the final sutra speaks about Swarupa Pratishtha. So finally, after Dharma Megha Samadhi, what happens? The gunas see that Purushartha, they become bereft of Purushartha. They don't now have to serve any purpose of the Purusha. Then what happens? Gunanam Pratiprasavaha. The gunas and their various outcomes in the form of Mahat, Ahankara, Panchatanmatra, etc., the Bhutas, Indriyas, etc. So gunas in those form, they attain Pratiprasava. And so they go back into the cause. And then what happens? So that is Kaivalyam. And it can also be termed as Swarupa Pratishtha for Chiti Shakti. The Chaitanya becomes firmly established. Pratishtha Prakarshena Sthitihi, unchanging state of being. When the gunas attain Pratiprasava, when the gunas roll back into their cause, it is Swarupa Pratishtha. So it all began with Swarupa Avasthanam. Whenever there is a particular Samadhi state and the yogi experiences a Samadhi, certain glimpse of existence or certain glimpse of being established in the nature of consciousness is experienced. But later, by all the sadhanas, later what happens when the purusharthas, when the gunas roll back into their cause, it is not merely Swarupa Avasthanam. So from the glimpse of the Purusha by Swarupa Avasthanam initially, the culmination is Swarupa Pratishtha. So both from in the beginning of the Yogasūtra and also at the end, we find the terminology Swarupa Avasthana in the expression Swarupa Pratishtha, which sums up the journey of yoga and its grand culmination. So these are the 9 references in the Yogasūtra about the term Swarupa. When we come to Bhagavad-gītā, the second text, we see that the word Rupa is found. The second part of the compound is found in various Rupa, Vishwarupa, Ugra-rupa, Ananta-rupa. All these forms are there in Bhagavad-gītā except Swarupa. So this is the status of Swarupa in Bhagavad-gītā. And then when we come to Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā, only one reference on Swarupa is found, and that too is very enlightening. So there is in the 3rd chapter, towards the awakening of the Kundalini, we see a reference, Tato yato vanhyapanau pranamushnaswarupakam enatyanta pradiptastu jvalano dehajastatha. So then towards, in the path of awakening the Kundalini, what happens? The apana getting heated by the Jఠaragni moves up. Apana in its nature is heavy, it moves downwards, but being heated by the various practices of bandha, by the bandha, the apana is aligned with the Jఠaragni, and then the Jఠaragni heats the apana and pushes it upwards. So then what happens? This apana then goes and joins with the prana, which is pressed down. And what is the nature of prana? Pranam Ushnaswarupakam. So the nature of prana is already Ushna, already hot. And then the heated apana, the apana which is heated by the Jఠaragni. So the combination of the already naturally hot prana and then the heated apana, so they two join, and then tena atyanta pradiptaha. Then the Jఠaragni blazes forth, and then because of that heat, what happens is the Kundalini is jolted to awakening. So in this way, we see interesting aspect that prana by its nature is Ushna Svarupa. By its form, by its original nature, it is Ushna Svarupa. While it is not so for apana, it has to be heated by the Jatharagni. Only then it will rise up, and prana apana sanyoga, which is Haṭha-yoga, that will happen, and then the awakening of Kundalini will take place. So in this way, it's a very interesting references that we saw about the Svarupa with regard to the usage of Svarupa in the three texts. So thus we see that in the yoga literature, there is the Svarupa of consciousness, Svarupa of Swashakti, Swami Shakti, Svarupa of Chitta, and of course the Svarupa of Prana was also seen in Haṭha-yoga-pradīpikā. And what is done with this, with the Svarupa? Sometimes it is Svarupa Avasthana, then it is Svarupa Pratishtha, Svarupa Upalabdhi, Svarupa Anukara, Svarupa Sanyama. So when the Svarupa is processed with these, then what is attained? Kaivalya is attained, Bhoga is attained, or the states of Samadhi is attained, Siddhi in the form of Bhuta Jaya, Indriya Jaya is attained, and even one among the eight limbs of yoga, that is Pratyahara, that is also attained. So in this way, it is very interesting to note the Svarupas of the various entities, and then the utilization of the Svarupa, and then the outcome of utilization of the Svarupa in the various prescribed yogic manner leads to the various yogic benefits. So this process, this insight, this mechanism connected to Svarupa has come to the fore by this activity of Śabda-yoga. Thank you very much. Namaste.